Archaeology has revealed many secrets of our past, but there are finds that just don't add up. They refuse to fit into familiar schemes. From impossible structures to undeciphered codes, here are 20 archaeological mysteries that science still cannot explain. Enjoy watching on the TopFacts channel. On the east bank of the Nile, in the Aswan Granite Quarry, lies one of the most candid and at the same time enigmatic artifacts of ancient Egypt, the unfinished obelisk. Had it been completed and raised, it would have been the largest stone monolith in the history of the Egyptians, roughly 42 meters long and weighing over 1,000 tons. Its unfinished state is the whole intrigue. We see the process, but we don't fully understand the how. The obelisk is cut on 3 sides and still holds to the bedrock below. Most researchers tie the commission to the era of Hatshepsut, the 15th century BCE, a time of gigantic building projects. Hatshepsut adored obelisks and erected them at Carnac. 2 of them are still among the tallest in Egypt today. The Aswan obelisk, judging by its scale, was conceived as her crowning monument. Why did they stop? As they dug deeper, natural cracks in the granite began to spread. Workers struck with dolerite pudding stones, removing layer after layer, and at some point it became clear. The risk was too great. The giant could split. The work was abandoned. But more questions than answers remain. First, logistics. How could you even move a slab of 1,000 tons? Theories include sledges on greased tracks, thousands of people pulling, a special barge down the Nile. But for such a mass, even these scenarios seem at the limit. There are no depictions with a clear process of moving, so the topic remains open. Second, the intent. Why attempt such a reckless scale? Did Hatshepsut want to surpass everyone? Or was the obelisk meant for a specific temple project? There are no written confirmations, only informed guesses. And finally, the third layer of the riddle, the level of engineering. The Egyptians clearly had a subtle feel for the properties of stone, for levers, for the distribution of forces, for labor organization. This unfinished giant nudges us to admit their knowledge may have been far deeper than we are used to thinking. Today, the unfinished obelisk lies in the Aswan Quarry, open to visitors, a frozen frame from an ancient construction site. The paradox? It tells almost everything about the process and almost nothing about the real how. On a rise above Brush Creek in southern Ohio winds a giant earthwork effigy, the Great Serpent Mound. Its length is more than 400 meters, the embankment height up to 1.5, the width 20 to 30. The outline is unmistakable, a serpent with a coiled tail and an open mouth swallowing an oval mound, as if an egg. It became known in the 19th century, and today it is the largest effigy mound in the world and a World Heritage Site. The construction is multi-layered, clays, stone, carefully compacted horizons. The location is no accident either. The plateau was formed by the effects of an ancient meteor impact. The landscape here is unusual. The main mystery, who and why. For a long time, the monument was attributed to the Adena culture, known for its mounds. But radiocarbon dates from charcoal inside the embankments more often point to the 11th century CE and the Fort Ancient culture. There is evidence of rebuilds. Perhaps the mound was renewed and reinterpreted. Why a serpent? Many versions. The oval in the mouth, an egg, a symbol of fertility. Or the sun. Then, the whole composition is about cosmic cycles. Astronomical alignments are noted as well. The head points towards sunset on the day of the summer solstice. Bends may correspond to lunar extremes. Coincidence or precise cosmography? There are no direct written testimonies, and the oral traditions of indigenous peoples bearing serpent symbolism are hard to link rigidly to this specific object due to the time gap. Research shows impressive craftsmanship. Layers were laid neatly, materials were chosen deliberately, the labor was collective and well coordinated. But the final meaning still slithers, like the serpent itself. In the late 1930s near Baghdad, small clay vessels were found, about 13 centimeters high. Inside was a copper can, sealed with bitumen, and an iron rod inserted into the center. On a scientist's table, this simple combination suddenly looked like a galvanic cell. Replicas filled with acidic liquid, vinegar, grape juice, indeed produced a weak current. The dating is roughly from the 2nd century BCE to the 2nd century CE, the Parthian-Sasanian period. Hence the mid-20th century hypothesis. What if ancient Mesopotamia knew electricity? But let's break. No wires, devices, or traces of electrochemical plating have been found in archaeological context. And although the idea of electroplating is sometimes voiced, confirmed objects with such coding from that era do not exist. The context of the finds is also tricky. There are few vessels, all from the Baghdad area, and they were not recovered in an ideal excavation but by collecting. So we teeter between two shores. Either these are household vessels reinterpreted after the fact, or a hint of early understanding of chemical reactions. Most specialists today are cautious. It is more correct to call them enigmatic artifacts, rather than proof of lost electrical engineering. But admit it, the very possibility is enchanting. The Ajanta Caves in Maharashtra are a masterpiece of Buddhist art. 30 rock-cut grottos, carved into a bend of cliff above a gorge. Dates range from the 2nd century BCE to the 6th century CE. Inside are sculptures, colonnades, and most importantly, frescoes, jatakas, scenes from the Buddha's life, courtly life. Everything is vivid, lively, detailed. But how did artists work in the depths of caves with almost no daylight? There is no soot on the vaults, so torches and sooty lamps are unlikely. One version, reflected light, polished bronze mirrors, vessels with water directing sunbeams into the depths. Another, clean lamps with special wicks and oils, producing minimal smoke. Direct evidence is scarce. The riddle holds. The painting technique is complex. Mineral pigments on a thin plaster, hues have lasted 1.5 millennia. Faces, jewelry, textiles are rendered finely, meaning the masters truly saw the surface well. How exactly did they turn on the light? The question is open and alluring. On the high plateaus of western Bolivia, around Mount Sajama, lies a gigantic network of geoglyphs, the Sajama lines. The area is about 22,000 square kilometers. These are not figures like at Nazca, but mostly straight paths, stretching for many kilometers across hills and valleys. From the air, like a gigantic grid. They are made simply. The dark surface layer was removed, exposing light soil. But the simplicity is deceptive. Many lines run across rugged terrain almost perfectly straight for tens of kilometers. Without optics, without theodolites, how? Likely the labor of many generations and clear landmarks in the landscape and on the horizon. What for? They are too narrow and uneven for roads. Version 1. They linked sacred places, shrines, cholpas, burial towers, apu, significant peaks. Version 2. Ceremonial routes, ritual axis lines of the cosmos. Version 3. Community boundaries. But the network is so vast and interwoven that a single reason is unlikely to explain everything. There is no written tradition. Oral information is fragmentary. Satellites revealed the scale, but not the meaning. This is one of humanity's largest and most mysterious drawings on the Earth. On the east shore of the island of Pohnpei, FSM, lies the ruined city of Nan Madol, more than 90 artificial islets on a coral reef connected by canals. On the islets are walls of basalt prisms up to 8 meters high, courtyards, tombs. From the 12th to the 16th centuries, this was the ceremonial and political center of the Saudeleur dynasty. Mystery number 1, construction. The basalt columns weigh tons. There were no metal tools, no wheels, no draft animals. How were such masses quarried, transported, and laid? There are legends of supernatural power and hypotheses about rafts and hauling, but a full engineering recipe is still lacking. Mystery number 2, the location. A city on a reef is vulnerable to storms and tsunamis. Why go onto the water? Perhaps the rulers demonstrated separation from common people and control over the elements. There is also an idea of defense, but the canal network does not look convenient for large-scale protection. At its peak, a few hundred nobles plus service people, specialized islets, kitchens, priests, tombs. In the 17th century, the center was abandoned. A coup, ecological difficulties, the logistics of supply, likely causes. But the key answer, how they mobilized and coordinated resources for such long-term construction, still lies ahead. In 1887, in a field near Glasgow, the priest antiquarian James Harvey uncovered a gigantic flat sandstone slab, about 13 by 8 meters, covered like a star map, with mysterious symbols, spirals, concentric rings, pathways, and dozens of cup depressions, one of the largest arrays of Neolithic and Bronze Age cup and ring art in Europe. What is it? Astronomy? Boundaries? Rituals? A map of the land? There is no firm answer. The era had no writing, and direct parallels are few. The stone's story is dramatic. By the mid-20th century, both interest and vandalism. In 1965, the slab was buried to save it. In 2016, it was briefly uncovered, scanned in three-dimensional detail, and reburied. Now the digital copy is studied while the original is safe. Why did ancient people invest so much effort into abstractions on open rock? Why are similar signs scattered from Spain to Scandinavia? The Cochno Stone is like the voice of an era we can hear, but not understand. Sometimes symbols say more by what they leave unsaid. And now guess, if you stood on this slab 3,000 years ago, what would you see? A map of the sky, a map of the earth, or a map of the soul? On the hills of southeastern Zimbabwe lie the ruins of the city that gave its name to an entire country. The 11th to 15th centuries CE, a political and trading center of a powerful state that controlled the routes of southern Africa. 3 zones: the hill complex, the great enclosure, and the valley ruins. The walls, without mortar, of neatly dressed granite. Thickness up to 5 meters, height over 10. Inside the great enclosure is a 10-meter conical tower, unique for the region. Population, by estimates, from 10 to 20,000. Traces of far-reaching exchange, porcelain and glass beads from China and Persia. But the function of the colossi is debated. Is it a fortress, a palace, a shrine, a sign of power? The conical tower, a granary, an altar, a status symbol? There are several answers, none final. Why did the city fade by the 15th century? Soil exhaustion, overgrazing, the shift of trade routes toward the coast are likely factors. Another important thread is the mythology of the colonial era. 19th, 20th century Europeans tried to attribute the construction to external peoples. Modern archaeology has clearly shown the builders were the ancestors of the Shona, but how this elite lived day to day, how the space of the walls was conceived exactly, we still have to learn. Beneath the small town of Paula lies a 3-level underground complex of the 4th-3rd millennia BCE, a sanctuary and necropolis at once. The upper tier consists of expanded natural cavities. The middle and lower are exquisitely carved chambers, with columns and vaults, as if surface architecture were transplanted underground. Remains of more than 7,000 people were found, along with ceramics, beads, figurines. The most famous chamber is the Oracle Room, with astonishing acoustics. A voice at certain frequencies, about 110 hertz, resonates throughout the complex. The body feels the vibration. Was this intentionally calculated? It seems so. The effect is too striking to be accidental. The walls are adorned with spirals and, rare for Europe, red ochre paintings, among the oldest. As usual in the Neolithic, the riddles are both technical and semantic. How did they dig so deep with stone tools, while maintaining stability and ventilation? Why create such a unique object? And why did the tradition not continue? The sleeping lady, a miniature figurine of a reclining woman, sparks debate. Fertility, death, and rebirth. We see enormous efforts invested in a symbolic space, and we know almost nothing about the scripts enacted there. Summer of 1908. The Palace of Phaistos in Crete. The Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier lifts from the earth a round clay disc about 15 centimeters in diameter. On both sides, a spiral of impressed signs, 241 imprints, 45 different symbols. The crucial point, the signs were not incised but stamped, an early example of movable type. Dating, mid-2nd millennium BCE, the heyday of Minoan civilization. Crete already had scripts, Cretan hieroglyphs and linear A. The latter is still unread but occurs often. Yet the Disc's sign system is unique. It has no peers. What is it? A hymn? A calendar? A game? A magical text? Proposals abound, but without a Rosetta Stone, it's all guesswork. A single object is too narrow a base for a confident decipherment. The context of the find, a basement, nearby Minoan materials, but the purpose is unclear. If someone went to the trouble of making a set of stamps, the intent must have been serious. Why did the system not go into series? A prototype of writing that failed to develop? A one-off sacred item? Today the disc is kept in the Heraclean Museum and continues to tease philologists and archaeologists, an ideal symbol of a message from the past that we cannot yet read. In 1952, among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves near Qumran, they found not parchment and not papyrus, but 2 strips of finely worked copper, once joined with rivets. The text is not a prayer and not a sectarian rule, but an inventory of treasure caches. 64 secret places, talents of gold and silver, vessels, and precise clues. In the cistern under the steps, 40 talents of silver. In the cave of the old laundry, 70 talents. The language is rough, technical Hebrew. The date, about the 1st century CE, the time of the temple's destruction, year 70. A logical version. This is a record of temple wealth hidden before the catastrophe. Another, property of the Essene community or wealthy families. But the main question, where is the hoard? Decades of searching, without result. Skeptics say the text is ritual, symbolic. Proponents of reality say the treasures were either found earlier or they still await their Schliemann. The history of hunts in the 1960s added scandal, and scholars rightly warn, the chase for gold must not eclipse the historical context. But the fact itself is unique. Nothing like it, a metallic map of treasure, exists elsewhere in the ancient world. The Copper Scroll is a perfect lure for the imagination. Near the town of Carnac stretches kilometers of Neolithic menhirs, more than 3,000 standing stones. Straight rows for hundreds of meters, circles, groups, nearby, dolmens and tumuli. The stones are of different sizes, from boulders to giants. The labor to transport and erect them without wheels and iron was colossal. There must have been organization and intent. What intent? An observatory? A ritual landscape? Boundaries? An ancestor cult? Unlike Stonehenge, there are no lintel trilithons here. The composition is less architectural and therefore harder to interpret. Modern aerial imaging and LiDAR reveal a scale far wider than tourist postcards. This is a whole country of stones. Access to part of the fields is now restricted to protect the soil. This restrains excavations, but preserves the monument. And the stones continue to keep silence. At a depth of about 25 meters off the coast of Yonaguni Island, divers in the 1980s discovered stone terraces, platforms, steps, as if walls and pillars. Put this together in your head, and you get an underwater city. Or the play of nature? For decades, the debate has not subsided. On the one hand, the geometry is striking. Right angles, long planes, a stage, roads. Some even see a carved head. On the other hand, the rock is bedded. Sandstone readily fractures along planes and naturally creates such forms. Erosion, tectonics, surf. The main lack is the absence of a cultural kit. There are no tools, ceramics, or traces of working nearby that typically accompany man-made structures. In 1894, gold miners in a Shikani bog near Yekaterinburg found fragments of a huge wooden object. From the pieces, they assembled a vertical figure with human visages and geometric ornament. Before us is the Shigir Idol, now dated to about 12,500 years ago, the oldest known preserved wooden sculpture in the world. The original height was about 5.5 meters. Today, 2.8 survive. It was carved from a larch trunk covered with zigzags, fir tree patterns, chevrons, and closely set faces, as if a pantheon of spirits or a chain of ancestors. The age is Mesolithic, before agriculture, meaning that even then there existed complex symbols and large collective projects. The bog conserved the wood, allowing study of the finest cuts. Three-dimensional scanning preserves the details, but the meaning is in a fog. A totem? A cosmogony? A storytelling pillar for rituals? There's almost nothing to compare it with, and therein lies the idol's power. It opens a window into the mental world of hunter-gatherers and immediately drops the curtain. In 1986, speleologists in caves on Mount Owen stumbled upon a huge mummified claw, skin and flesh still on it. It looked like it had been torn off yesterday. It turned out to be the foot of a moa, a giant flightless bird long extinct. Moa included several species, from turkey-like to giants, 3 to 4 meters tall, herbivores, masters of New Zealand's pre-colonial ecosystem. It is believed they were driven to extinction by hunting and environmental changes in the 14th, 15th centuries. So, how such a fresh claw? The answer, the cave climate, cold and dry, ideal for natural mummification. Analyses attributed it to a mountain, comparatively small species. But the find stoked imagination. What if some populations lasted longer? Science overall leans toward the classic extinction scenario, but the living object itself reminds us. The story of species disappearance is rarely instantaneous, and in the backcountry, the world keeps surprises. See, as if the claw says, you have not found everything yet. The year 1961, a Neolithic settlement of the Vinca culture. The archaeologist Nikolai Vlasa finds 3 small clay tablets, rectangular, round, and rounded with holes for suspension. On them are shallow but clear incisions, grids, crosses, abstract signs, as if pictograms of animals and objects. The cultural layer dates to around 5,300 BCE. Here a debate flares up. Is this early writing, earlier than Sumerian? Or a complex system of signs, but still pre-alphabetic? Proponents of writing see repeated signs and linearity, that is, order. They point to the wider corpus of Vinca symbols across the Balkans. Hundreds of objects bear similar signs, and the tablets are the pinnacle of the tradition. Skeptics remind us the tablets themselves were fired later, possibly in a fire. The direct date is blurry, and most importantly, writing demands a corpus of texts. And here, we have scraps. Call it what you will. The lesson is clear. Already in the Neolithic, Europe was playing with abstraction no less boldly than the classic civilizations. Perhaps it is a ritual code, a counting, a community's marking of meanings? The answer is still far off, but the very possibility of Europe's first alphabet tickles the mind. The year 1999, the state of Veracruz. During roadwork, a rectangular slab of serpentinite is found, about 36 by 21 centimeters, covered with signs arranged in horizontal rows. 62 distinguishable symbols: plants, animals, geometry, abstractions. This slab would be called the Cascajal Block, and many would see in it the oldest example of writing in the Americas. The context: the Olmecs, the mother culture of Mesoamerica, the 15th to 4th centuries BCE. Before the find, there was debate whether they had a full script. The block seems to answer, yes, the signs proceed as a text, repeat, are organized. But critics object. The artifact is single. There are no parallels. Writing requires a mass of repeated inscriptions. Hence, conclusions are cautious. If this is writing, it predates the Maya, and literacy in Mesoamerica arose earlier and independently of the Old World. And if it is pre-writing, it is still powerful evidence of how early societies arranged the world into signs. In the delta of the Diquis River and nearby areas are scattered hundreds of almost perfect stone spheres, from balls the size of a fist to giants 2.5 meters across and 15 tons. Materials: gabbro, limestone, sandstone. Time: roughly 500 to 1500 CE. The Diquis culture. They were discovered in the 1930s when United Fruit was clearing fields for bananas. The technique is not fully clear. How did they achieve such roundness without steel? Traces of workshops and tools are scarce. The purpose is also a riddle. Spheres were found by settlements, plazas, burials, sometimes in lines, triangles, circles. Status markers? Ritual axes? Stone punctuation marks in the landscape? There are no inscriptions, and the variety of sizes confounds interpretation. In the 20th century, myths grew around the spheres about aliens, but the real story is far more powerful: incredible patience and a sense of form. Today, many spheres are protected by UNESCO. Some are in museums, some in situ. The meaning, like the smooth surface, is perfect and elusive. On the limestone ridges of southeastern Pakistan stretches one of the largest and least known prehistoric industrial complexes, the Rohri Flint mines. Here, high-quality flint was quarried for millennia. From the lower Paleolithic, more than 200,000 years ago, and especially intensively in the times of the Indus civilization, about 2,600 to 1,900 BCE. The landscape: thousands of pits and carpets of debitage, kilometers of production tails. Organization is a mystery. Centralized control by the Indus elite, or a network of independent workshops? The Indus script is undeciphered. There are no direct documents, but the scales hint at planning, logistics, standards. Why then are such vital minds so poorly studied? Politics, climate, and simple inaccessibility all play roles. We love palaces and seals, while the industrial blackened hands of civilizations remain in the shadows. Meanwhile, without flint sickles, drills, knives, there would be no fields and no cities. Rohri reminds us, The foundation of history is also the quarries where stones rang. On a limestone hill in southeastern Anatolia is a place that rewrote the beginning of our history. Göbekli Tepe, excavation since the 1990s under Klaus Schmidt. Dates around 9,600 BCE. Monumental architecture by hunter-gatherers, long before agriculture, metal, and writing. Round and oval enclosures with T-shaped pillars, many 5 meters high and about 20 tons. On the pylons, reliefs, lions, boars, serpents, vultures, scorpions, abstractions. And here's the paradox. There are few everyday traces, almost no hearths or kitchen refuse. Before us, it seems, is a pure, sacred machine, a place of gatherings, rituals, myths. This challenges the familiar scheme, first agriculture, then temples. Here, perhaps the opposite. A common cult gathered people and pushed them towards sedentarism. Another riddle is the deliberate burial. Around 8,000 BCE, the complexes were covered with rubble and debris. Why did they bury the sanctuary themselves? A new cycle? A change of faith? We do not know. Geophysics shows that only a little has been excavated. Beneath the hill lie dozens more circles. Every season brings discoveries and new questions. But the main one has already been asked. Humanity's capacity for complex cooperation and symbolic thinking is much older than we thought. The stones of Göbekli Tepe seem to whisper about rituals we cannot reconstruct and about a world that still awaits its translator. What do you think about the episode, and what thoughts do you have on this topic? Write comments, leave likes, and watch previous episodes on the TopFacts channel, which are also insanely interesting. They have, by the way, already appeared on your screen. Thank you for watching.